Welcome to the Professional Podcast in the Professional Group. My name is Guy Dawson, and I am the managing member of Classic Communications, a full-service public relations and marketing company. And I am here with Rachel West. And she is going to share her perspectives on professionalism with us today. She is a growth coach and has been a friend of mine for many years. Welcome to the Professionals Podcast, Rachel.
Thanks, Guy, for having me. I'm happy to be here.
And you are a growth coach. For those out there who might not know exactly what that is, could you explain how you help people?
Yeah, so I'm a personal growth coach and I focus on mindset and mental health. So, what that means is I help people discover the root cause as to what holds them back and prevents them from moving forward in the areas that they struggle with the most.
And how did you discover that you had an affinity to help people to get through the things that are holding them back?
Interesting story. So, I started coaching a year ago in January, and prior to that, I owned a graphic design business with a partner. And her and I had discovered neurolinguistic programming through networking, and we had decided to study it for our business for the communication side so that we could linguistically craft marketing messages to reach more people by speaking into their language. And through that process, you learn a lot about yourself and how you were raised and how you are. And I just discovered that I wanted to help people discover the root cause and specifically specialize in addiction. A lot of my family members growing up, I witnessed, alcohol, drugs, gambling, self-harm. And when I discovered the tools of NLP and the knowledge that it gave me, and that I could help people through those issues by discovering that root, I knew that this was my path and this is what I need to be doing.
You mentioned that you were in graphic design at that time, and then I guess as a result of your discoveries or your transformation or what you were learning about yourself, you ended up transitioning out of that profession into this profession. Can you explain the process behind that and why you did it?
Yeah. So going through this training that I was going through, we took a day and we just focused on ourselves. And we really dug deep into our background, our family history, why we are how we are, limiting beliefs that we have created. And I had been working with a partner on this exercise, and I was sharing with her that I had this pattern that I would go through where I would hit my bottom and I would use that to push off of in order to do what I wanted to do. So several times in my life, I would experience this bottom. And then after experiencing it, would give me enough motivation and desire to do what I wanted to do. And so during this exercise, I was telling her that I could feel in my body that this bottom was coming again. And I was eagerly waiting, like excited, like, oh my gosh, this bottom is coming and I can't wait for it. And I stepped back and was like, oh my gosh. I just heard myself say this out loud, that I was eagerly waiting for my bottom to come so I can do what I want to do again. And that made the light bulb go off. And I was like, I'm not doing what I want to be doing, which was my graphic design agency. And so I immediately, literally the next day, I woke up and was like, that's not what I'm supposed to be doing. This is what I'm supposed to be doing. So within 2 weeks, I had made the decision that I was going to transition out of that into this. And 3 months later, I did it because I was no longer going to wait for the bottom to come for me to do what I wanted to do. I just did it.
So just in an instant, basically, you were able to, they talk about success is a decision away. And
Yes.
you really had a transformational moment that you pursued that led you into this new career that you you seem to be finding very fulfilling.
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what happened.
And so it's quite a transition. You go from being very creatively oriented as a graphic design person to being a growth coach. There's a whole different aspect of professionalism in doing what you're doing now. So can you explain how you help people? How do you express your professionalism in what you're doing now?
Well, in my opinion, a professional is someone who knows a little bit more than the people they're teaching. And so I went through an extensive training over the course of 2 years. And I really studied the process to learn so that I could then turn around and teach others. So transitioning from graphic design to coaching was easy because I was aligned with doing it, because I was studying it for the right reasons, and because I consciously made the effort to learn the material so that I could teach others. So now that's what I'm doing. And even though I'm brand new into it, I am confident that I can help others, and I am confident in my coaching abilities.
What are some of the scenarios that people approach you with when they're looking for help with growth in their lives? Where are they in their businesses, and is it just business wise that you help people, or are there other aspects of their growth that you work with them on as well?
It's in their life. So wherever they're struggling the most, if they're struggling in their business and their finances, if they're struggling in their health, if they're struggling in communication, it's helping them move past that. So I'm going to use finance for an example for today. Finances is the number one problem in homes in society today. So let's say that you're a child, me, and my parents didn't have a lot of money. So as a child, I witnessed my parents arguing about money all the time. And so because of that, I created the belief that money was bad. It caused fighting and arguing. So fast forward to me being an adult and having a business, I still had that underlying root cause that finance or money is bad because it causes fighting and arguing. So even though I was doing the work and the action to have a successful business, it wasn't happening. And I discovered it was because I had that underlying root, that belief that I had created as a child that was holding me back. So I help people discover what that unconscious belief or habit that they created years ago that's stopping them from moving forward. Does that make sense?
It does, and I think that we do so many things unconsciously, Rachel. We just go about our lives and we don't realize the type of stimulus and the information that we're inheriting as we go on this life journey. We just feel like we're living and this is our lives. We're having all these different experiences with family, with friends, and others. And a lot of times I think that we don't understand that these experiences are they're a part of our psyche and that they have an impact on the decisions that we make. And we're making these decisions unconsciously, not knowing why we're doing things, but we're creating results that we may not even want, but we can't stop because these beliefs are so deeply ingrained in our unconsciousness. And so that's why people repeat patterns over and over, and you'll see generations of people who, as you had mentioned before, they get certain beliefs in their minds, and then they hold on to the belief, and they have kids, and kids hold on to that belief, and it goes on and on and on and on. And that's for the things that we want, and the things that we don't want. And so I guess a lot of your training and the things that you help people with is how can we eliminate the unconscious programs that don't serve us?
Exactly.
Yeah, I mean, I think that I'm such a big believer in understanding the mind and understanding that there's so much more than meets the eye. And sometimes you need a person who's done more research, as you had mentioned before. You know a little bit more than the person that you're working with, and so sometimes it just takes that person to be able to help you to take a look at things that you are doing unconsciously that are sabotaging.
Right. And if we're part of the problem, we can't be part of the solution. So sometimes we don't even see it. Like going back to my example of my pattern that I was repeating over and over, I didn't see that I was repeating that pattern over and over in my life. And it took me saying out loud, yes, we think our thoughts, and because we're so close to it, we don't see it. So it took me saying it out loud and me hearing it to realize that pattern that I was creating over and over, to break that cycle and move forward. So it's maybe sometimes people pointing it out to you because you're not seeing it because you're so close to it.
What are some extraordinary examples? I know when you're engaged in this type of work, as you had mentioned, change can happen suddenly for people as it did for you. What are some of the really inspirational experiences you've had with people who started to use these techniques that you work with them on to change their lives?
Um, well, it starts with your mindset, and it starts with the decision to change. And so when people come to work with me on changing that, we work on their mindset first. What are you saying to yourself? How are you communicating to yourself first? And work through that, because once you work on you, everything around you is going to change, because you're going to perceive it differently, because you've learned, because you've grown, and now you're seeing things and people differently than you did before.
Right, exactly. It's you're basically holding their hands, or I mean, well, not so much holding their hands. You're empowering them
Yes, empowerment.
to get out of themselves what's already there, and they just need someone to be able to point it out, someone who's not in the mix. As you had mentioned, when you're involved in something, there's a phrase that I heard many years ago that relates to this: is it's really hard to fix your brain with your brain.
Yeah.
Because your brain is what's causing, and that's why having some type of coaching or having mentoring or people who are not in the middle of it to point some things out to you can be really helpful. I know from my own experience in helping me create shifts in my mindset.
Yeah. It's the number one thing that's going to help you move forward, is shifting those thoughts that you're saying to yourself every day. So as society, most of us are programmed to focus on the negative, what we don't want. And so, I don't want a failed relationship. I don't want my business to fail. I don't want, you know, to not pay my rent on time or mortgage on time. We focus on what we don't want to happen. And so as we're doing that, we're creating that don't want to happen. And so if we shift that just a little and start thinking about what we do want, I want a successful business. I want a successful relationship. I want to pay my mortgage on time. Then that's what you'll create. It will happen. So it's just that little shift in your mindset of focusing on what you don't want to start focusing on what you do want.
Well, Rachel, I think that you are an excellent testimonial actually for the fact that these principles work. And I can really attest to that because when I met Rachel maybe 4 or 5 years ago, she was a very shy an introverted person. And we were talking about a radio interview, I mean, a television interview that we did when she was, yeah, it was probably about 4 or 5 years ago. And I mean, you are certainly a much more confident and empowered person. I can say this personally, having known you back then and knowing you now, and if what you've studied and what you're working on that you use to help others is something you've done with yourself, I think you're the best testimonial probably that you could offer to the world. Because I mean, I know for a fact that you were not nearly as confident of a person as you are today when I met you many years ago.
Yeah.
So when you talk to people, do you use your own self as an example of someone who had to overcome a lot in order to grow and make huge shifts in your own mindset?
Um, yes, and you just pointed out that I need to do it more because you're right. I didn't really, because I'm part of the problem, I can't be part of the solution. You don't realize it. And yes, I've known that I have grown, um, but I really didn't identify until you just mentioned that it does make a big difference. And just I keep going back to it and focusing on your mindset and making little changes. And that's what I did. Little change here, little change here, little change here. And over the course of 3 years now, it's made a huge difference.
And how can implementing these principles that you've been talking about in terms of growth and shifting your mindset, how can that raise the level of professionalism that you're able to provide for people in your business and career?
When you start working on you, I said this before, everything around you changes and everything grows with you. So as you develop in your growth, your professionalism grows as well. And people tend to let fear hold them back. That was me. I was scared of being in front of the camera back 4 years ago, even a little bit still today. And you just have to do it. That's the number one thing I found is you just have to do it. It may not be perfect, but it's done. And now you can look back at that video. If I could go back 4 or 5 years ago and look at that video that I probably never watched because I was afraid to see what it looked like, I could have learned, okay, what can I change and make better this time? And that goes for any area of your life. Anything that we do, if you just do it and take that first action step, you're going to get feedback yourself. And you can look back and say, what can I do differently today that I didn't do yesterday that's going to make me better today in that area?
That's an excellent point about professionalism, Rachel. Part of being a professional is taking risks. And it's a small risk, but it is, as you had mentioned, sometimes you're fearful, but you have to take those steps. That's the only way that you'll ever be the professional that you want to be. Pulling back will never lead you to the point of becoming the type of person that you truly want to become. You have to be willing to take the risk. Risk is an aspect of professionalism. People who are professionals take risks, and they know that the risks that they're taking are a part of their story and their growth, and it's going to catapult them to be more than what they are.
Exactly.
If there was one aspect of professionalism that you could recommend to someone, Rachel, what would it be?
Okay. The number one person that we lie to the most is ourself. So in order to grow and move forward, be honest with yourself first.
Great point. Yes, be true to yourself. How can you be true to anyone else until you're true to yourself? Actually, the only person that you really have to be true to ultimately is yourself, because we have to live with ourselves. I think that was some excellent advice. And I appreciate having the opportunity to interview you again, Rachel. Again, it's been quite a while, and to see the growth in you as a woman, it really is extraordinary. I mean, and I'm not, uh, she was an extremely introverted person that we barely could even get to do the interview
Yeah.
that we did. And to this woman now who's made so many breakthroughs, and you've moved in another direction in your career, and I really applaud your efforts. And how can people get in contact with you if they want to learn some of these principles on how to shift their mindset and grow?
The best way is to visit my website. It's empoweringgrowthcoach.com, and there you can find my contact information if you want to email or call me. You can also find all my social media links there if you want to follow me there as well.
All right. Well, thanks again for stopping by the Professionals Podcast, Rachel. And we appreciate all of you for tuning in to our weekly podcast. Tomorrow, we are going to be having one of the Professionals workshops, and that will be with Carol Andrews. She's going to be teaching us the importance of accurate business record keeping. Boy, if you're someone who is in business and you are doing things that require you to spend money and take in money, having accurate records of what you are doing is critical for your long-term success. And so that will be from 6 p.m. to 7 p.m. on Thursday, January the 7th. So please tune in. There's all kinds of information in the Professionals group about that event that's coming up. Also, be on the lookout, of course, every week for these podcasts here in the Professionals group. We are also in the development of a professionals mastermind, and we're going to be doing some wonderful things, bringing professionals together to help one another in business and our personal lives and in our careers. And also, we are going to be having some basic workshops that are going to be coming up to help you in the areas of starting a new business, marketing more effectively, running a business more successfully. We have a lot of great things in 2021 that are going to be helpful for you as a professional here in the Professionals group. Stay tuned for more updates on all these things, and take care of yourselves and go out there and be the professional that you were always meant to be. See you soon.